What's up, everybody? Couch Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video, and I was so excited about episode 3 that I had to make an agent tier list in the freaking flesh. So here I am, and there is just so many different agent changes that we're gonna go through them. We're gonna be placing the agents in their respective tiers, so that you know what agents are good, bad, and everything in between. And on top of that, we're going to be placing KO at the end, so you know exactly where that agent places as well. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below, because there's never been a better time to get that GameLeap premium sub with our special 50% off sale. You get all the in-depth tips and tricks and VODs, plus tons of new content that we're adding to the website right now at a fraction of the cost. Do yourself a favor, go check it out right now. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Okay, so we have a tier list right here, and typically we go through, you know, S to F or S to D tier, but I actually want to rename these because I want to make it so it makes more sense. Like S, what does S mean? What does D mean? So kicking it off with the S tier, we're gonna do define the meta. So meta is most effective tactics available. That's what it stands for. So characters in the S tier are characters that are literally defining everything else from the top down. So from the high ranks to the low ranks, these are characters that are just going to be the most solid, the most impactful, and they define the meta as a whole. So the A tier is going to be meta staples. So these are not necessarily defining the meta, but they're in the meta. They operate in the meta. They're characters that work really well with the characters that do define the meta. They might not be played every single time, but they're very solid and they're very good picks. B tier is going to be flexible picks. So these are going to be characters that they might not necessarily be as powerful as the meta staple characters, or as obvious, but on certain maps, or if you really like these characters and you're really proficient with these characters, you could get value on them as well. Now, the C tier is gonna be characters that are map dependent, or they're gonna be characters that are mastery dependent. So you either have to be an absolute god at that character to get that character to work, or you have to play it on the very specific maps that they're good in. And then the D tier is better options. Anyways, all right. I think this clarifies, you know, the S through D tier a lot better. And now we can actually go through and start to place these characters. So first off, I wanted to talk about Brimstone. So we can go look at the Brimstone changes. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go to the changes and then we're gonna go back to the list. So Brimstone actually got his cost increased from his incendiary from 200 to 250. Now, Brimstone was already one of the worst characters in the game, and they actually nerfed him even more. Even though it's slight, it really, he needed a buff of some sort, and this really, I mean, it's obvious there's better options available. Even with Astra's huge nerfs, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, I mean, Omen's just a better pick overall. Viper is definitely going to be better on many maps. Brimstone, unfortunately, he needs a completely new ability or a rework with a stim beacon. There's better options available, and of course, you could still get value. Gunplay is buffed in this patch, so you can get value on every agent. There's definitely better options that you could be picking. Now, the next character we got to talk about is Breach, and this one's complicated because if we look at all the changes, look at this page of changes. I mean, on one hand, you know, he only has 2 flashes now, and the flashes cost more, and they go out slower, so they're easier to play around by the enemy. That's all bad for him, but now, you know, his fault line charges a lot faster, and it covers more surface area. And on top of that, the windup, you know, is less, and the unequipped time is less, so he can fire sooner. So there's just a lot to really like about the fault line. And then on top of that, Aftershock, it explodes 3 times instead of just once. It can really force someone out of a cubby. The explosion radius is increased. The unequipped time, so you can fire faster, it's now decreased. Now the cost is increased, but it got all these benefits. And really, it's gonna be very hard to find out exactly where this character belongs because he's like a completely new character at this point. Now, that being said, there is something that he's really good at, which is flushing out cubbies better than he ever has been before. And he's honestly even more powerful than before. Just flat out more powerful. Yes, he got a slight nerf up here, but this is all amazing, or at least the majority of this is. Now, I do think that there is a character on this list that we'll talk about a little bit later that actually deserves, you know, higher pick or a meta staple slot. And I don't necessarily think that, you know, Breach deserves that, especially for ranked play. He's going to be a little bit harder to pull off. He is definitely one of those characters that has the potential of being very good later down the line. But for now, we'll put him in that flex pick category. Could fit a team composition, could, you know, replace a duelist in a team composition. And yeah, I think he's going to be really good for those of you Breach mains. You're probably going to like the new changes, honestly. Now, Cypher, we got to talk about next. Cypher, his ultimate is now 1 cheaper, but that really doesn't matter And what does matter is the fact that Jett cannot dash through your traps. Now, you might not think that's a huge deal, but it is an incredibly huge deal when Jett is one of the most important characters in the freaking meta. And honestly, Cypher, that change alone is huge for Cypher. Very important. And if you couple that with the fact that Killjoy got some nerfs, Cypher is now going to be a meta staple in the Sentinel category. So for you Cypher mains, rejoice. Now, speaking of Jett, yes, we got to look at Jett's changes because there were a lot of Jett's changes. You know, the updraft, now it cost increased, 50. Tailwind, you can no longer dash through Cypher Trip. We talked about that. Cloudburst from 100 to 200. Blade Storm from 6 to 7. Now, these are all bad, and you would think that this would, you know, make Jett quite a bit weaker in the tier list, but the thing is, the Operator got buffed, and I said this before and I'll say it again. The Operator is going to be a viable weapon, and Jett uses the Operator better than any other agent. And if they didn't do this, if they didn't nerf Jett in this way, but still buff the Operator, that would have been really bad. But even in the current state, Jett is still going to be a meta-defining character. Now, that being said, I think that opping is going to be on the forefront because you got to understand that gunplay is overall buffed in this patch. While it might be a little bit more difficult to use because of the, you know, the running inaccuracy and the walking inaccuracy, abilities as a whole, characters as a whole, all got nerfed. A lot of the ability heavy characters got really nerfed, like Astra, and many characters got nerfed in one way or another. So gunplay is at the forefront. The op is definitely going to be a huge role in that, and Jett can still abuse it better than any other character. She's going to be in the S tier for sure. Next up, we got to talk about Omen. So let's hop over to Omen. Paranoia, the cost did get decreased, which is nice. That being said, the dark cover is much, much worse, and the shrouded step costs more money as well. Now, the thing is, Omen's competitors are actually, you know, at least Brimstone is, you know, still very bad, and Astra got really, really hit hard. So Omen actually gets to still be good, even though he did get hit pretty hard. He's going to be a meta staple. He's still one of the best controllers that you can play, and on some maps, he's going to be absolutely necessary, especially where Viper doesn't thrive on every single map. That being said, you're gonna feel that as an Omen mate. You are gonna feel those changes, so I'm sorry for you Omen players. Now we do gotta talk about Phoenix. Phoenix got basically very little changes, and he's gonna be right there with Breach as a flexible pick. So he could fit in a lot of different team compositions. He might not be the most oppressively powerful, and he's definitely not creating metas, but he can fill in to some of these compositions as like that 4th or 5th pick. So he's definitely still good, and if you're good with him, you can still definitely get value on him. Now, Raze is an interesting one because this Boombot change is a big deal. From 200 to 400, that is a really, really freaking big deal. The Showstopper ultimate increase, not so much, but that Boombot change, I mean, that's gonna add up, and that's her most powerful ability. You really want to be buying that almost every single round, and it's gonna cost you. Now, Raze can utilize, you know, some of the cheaper weapons a lot better, but with those, you know, walking changes, the accuracy changes, and with the judge nerf and different things like that, it's gonna be pretty hard for Raze to be that top tier as she was before. She's still gonna be great, don't get me wrong. It's just she's not gonna be quite as strong as she was before. So ultimately, Raze is probably between these two. I think she's still very, very good. I'm almost inclined to put her in a meta staple, but it's hard to know exactly how impactful these changes are going to be. That being said, I still think she probably deserves meta staple status, but it's close. And I want to know your opinion about this in the comments down below. Do you think she deserves here or here? Because in pro pick rate, she's been like here, like in between here. But these nerfs are a pretty big deal. Still very unique, still very powerful. I'm interested in what you have to say about it. Sage. Now, Sage got nerfs across the board. Slow Orb from 100 to 200, Barrier Orb from 300 to 400, and Resurrection from 7 to 8. Now, Raze did have some of the highest, you know, win rate and pick rate in ranked play. And I think because everyone is getting nerfed, she's going to be fine. She's still going to be a good character. She's still going to be viable, especially if, you know, you are picking her to fill in a team composition. I don't think that she's so powerful that she's like an auto include anymore. She definitely isn't going to be defining any metas, but she is a character that can fill in a lot of different roles in a team composition. Sova got a lot of nerfs, actually. Slight nerfs. Where the hell is he? Shock Dart increased 50. Recon Bolt now 5 more seconds, so your timing's a little bit different on you know, the cycles of engagement, because typically you engage as a team every 35 seconds, but now it's going to be 40 seconds. Something important to keep in mind for those of you who are trying to track the cycles of abilities. Owl Drone from 300 to 400, and then Hunter's Fury from 7 to 8. Now, all of these add up, and they all matter. Still, Sova is still a Define the Meta character. Still incredibly powerful, has been, still will be, and you got to understand that all the characters are getting hit one way or another, or at least the majority of them are. Next up is Viper, and what's interesting about Viper is Viper really didn't get any nerfs. I mean, she got like a Snakebite slight nerf, really. Like these two top techs balance each other out, and this is like a slight nerf, but Viper is so damn good. And when Omen gets a nerf and Astra gets a nerf, which were the two top, and she's still there, while she can't always fill the role of an Omen, right? She can't smoke in the same way that an Omen can. There's many maps like Icebox, maps like Split, and really she could be played with an Omen. There's a lot of maps that she's just going to define completely, and really she has to be a Define the Meta. I mean, she's one of the few agents that didn't get hit very hard from this patch, when most of the agents got nerfed pretty severely. Next up, we got to talk about Reyna. Now, this is going to be our first map dependent, mastery dependent. No, not really map dependent for Reyna. It's mainly mastery dependent. Like, Reyna is a character that, you know, she could be a flexible pick as well technically, but she doesn't provide that much for the team in comparison to some of these other picks. But of course, if you're a master at her, you're gonna be able to just dominate. That's kind of how Reyna is. It's always been that way in ranked, and it still is. You know, I mean, Tens was like at the LAN, he's the only one playing her because he's basically freaking smurfing at a LAN event. But it's basically mastery dependent. She's very good, but only in the right hands. Next up, we gotta talk about Killjoy. Killjoy is nerfed, so let's actually go look. She got hit pretty hard. So if we go look right here, the alarm bot from 7 to 20 and the turret from 10 to 20. Now, this is not going to change her basic playstyle, especially her defensive playstyle, all that much. Her attacking rotation playstyle is going to get hurt quite a bit, but because of the buffs to Cypher and the slight nerfs to her, she's going to be good, but she's going to kind of be more competitive with Cypher now. So she's going to get into that meta staple category. Now, Skye. Skye is a very, very difficult one. I'm going to be honest with y'all. Skye is very hard because on one hand, you know, she has only 2 flashes, but now she has the ability to fire when her flash is going off. So she can pop flash like behind her, peek a corner and fire. So she kind of gets to play this hybrid duelist character. And on top of that, the fact that she gets more charges throughout a round actually gets to let her play this more information gathering role. Skye is just a really hard character to evaluate because there's a chance that this character is like Define the Meta good. We have no idea, and I'm not going to pretend that I know right off the bat just by reading those, because there's so many different changes, so many moving parts here. But I know at the very least, she's going to be like very, very good meta staple. But you got to understand that she's still a character, the same with Breach, that is going to be better at the pro play, the high end. Doesn't mean it will reflect for every single rank, because she still needs synergy. While she can do a lot more things herself, which makes her a lot better in ranked play than she was before, she still is going to be a lot better in a coordinated setting with teammates that are going to follow up with you. So I'm going to put her in meta stables for now, and I think that there's a chance that she might go to Define the Meta. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Now, the next character that we got to talk about is actually Yoru. Now, unfortunately, Yoru's better options. These changes are basically inconsequential. They talked about a rework with the character. Until he gets that rework, there are better options for you to pick. And then Astra is a weird one because I'm actually going to put her here, and it's not really map dependent, it's more mastery dependent because Astra's still hard to use, but I want you to really take a note of all these nerfs they gave this character. The Nova Pulse, double the cooldown time. Gravity Well, double the cooldown time. When barriers drop, you cannot activate your stars for 1.4 seconds. And the recall cooldown is now 15 seconds. I mean, yes, the stars did get decreased, right? From 200 to 150. That's nice, but you can't combo right off the bat of a round anymore. This is going to take forever. I mean, this really hurts Astra. They went at her hard, and Astra wasn't even seeing that much ranked play. She was mainly seeing pro play because she needed that synergy, especially with teams. Like maybe she saw some play at the highest ranks, but she saw way more play in pro play than she did in ranked play, and now she's just completely neutered for ranked play. Now, I'm not saying that you can't play her and get value, but you're probably gonna have a better time, you know, doing or trailing, having teammates that are gonna play off you, or being an absolute god at the agent. Now, we do not have the picture for KO, but where would I put KO? most likely in the flexible pick category. We don't know exactly how that's going to look in the long term, but with all these abilities being nerfed, when the abilities are already nerfed so bad, having more abilities that can disable abilities is not as powerful as if abilities were completely overpowered, right? Like, if abilities were all buffed across the board and then you have a character that could disable them, that character is going to get more value, right? Because they're disabling more powerful abilities. But when everything, you know, abilities are obviously being hit here in this patch, gunplay is on the rise and abilities are, you know, more expensive and less effective. So he's going to stay in that flexible pick category, and I think he's probably going to stay there. I don't know exactly how good he's going to be in the grand scheme when you compare him to characters like Reyna and Phoenix. That's kind of the area that I'm putting him in right now, but I want to know your opinion. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think I'm right or wrong? Yeah, I do. I genuinely want to know your opinion about it. But yeah, this so far is my tier list. I think the only characters that I think this is kind of in between. Raze is a little bit in between. And then Skye is probably a little bit in between as well. Or maybe even up here. We're not entirely sure on that one. But let me know what you think about my list. Do you disagree? Do you agree? Do you think Breach is actually going to just destroy the meta? Do you actually think Brimstone defines the meta? I want to know what you think about all that in the comments down below. And yeah, go to the GameLeap website right now for a special 50% off sale, because there's just never been a better time to hop aboard and just climb the ranks of Valorant at a fraction of the cost. But thank you so much for coming by. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely a little bit different. Hope you enjoyed seeing my ugly mug. I love your faces, and I'll see you next time.